In November 1936, Agnes Ayres received a surprise call from Paramount. 15 years after her last major film, the studio wanted her back. This was a real-life Sunset Boulevard moment, and unlike Norma Desmond, there was no mistaking the offer. She'd be playing a role in Souls at Sea, albeit a minor one. But after a decade and a half of suffering, disaster, and isolation, this was the first step she had longed for, a step back to the limelight. On set, she found comfort in the support of those who remembered her glory days. She even felt that Rudolph Valentino, her former co-star from the Sheik, seemed to be there in spirit. She felt admired, loved, and most of all remembered. It was an astonishing moment, but in the end, that is all it would turn out to be. One moment. Not long after, she would be dead. Richard Griffith, in his book The Movie Stars, described Agnes Ayres' efforts to reclaim her fame as the grimmest, most tenacious, and in the end, most futile struggle to make a comeback. This is the story of Agnes Ayres, the glamorous, beautiful, and iconic superstar, who now lies almost completely forgotten. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. She was born Agnes Henkel on April 4, 1892, in Carbondale, Illinois. She had a brother, Solon William, born in December 1888. It's unclear if her father, Solon Augustus Henkel, passed away during her childhood or if her parents separated. Either way, we know that he was mostly absent during this time. By 1900, her mother, Emma Slack Henkel, had remarried Franklin Rendleman, a farmer, and the family relocated to Chicago while Agnes was still a teenager. She had early aspirations to study law, but by 1910, at 18, she was working as a bookkeeper and had no particular dreams of acting. Agnes's entry into film happened at Chicago's S&A Film Manufacturing Company in the winter of 1914, thanks to a friend's suggestion to visit the studio. She was spotted and asked if she would like to be an extra. Her first role was minor, in a crowd scene of a Francis X. Bushman and Beverly Bain film. Encouraged to continue, she soon found herself sharing a dressing room with Gloria Swanson, both extras at the time. She even appeared in an early Charlie Chaplin film, His New Job, in 1915. Agnes later reminisced about her formative years at S&A and the many characters she would portray. Perhaps in the morning I would start as a schoolgirl, hair down in curls and all that sort of thing. Then at 11, suffragettes were the order, while at 2, the call was for enthusiastic co-ed rooters at a football game. And in the late afternoon, I would put on formal clothes and attend a reception. During every free minute, we were experimenting with makeup, waiting for a chance at real parts. It was the finest experience imaginable. Days and days of just fun, with an undercurrent of real seriousness, for it meant our futures. Agnes managed to save some money from her weekly $35 salary at S&A. By the winter of 1916, she had saved enough to take herself and her mother to New York, where there were greater prospects for actresses. Agnes and her mother, Emma, didn't have any connections in the city, and finding work was challenging. Just as they were considering quitting and making a return to Chicago, director Frank Powell cast Agnes in a Marjorie Rambeau film, The Dazzling Miss Davison. She performed well and she became a regular face in Rambeau's movies, which included The Mirror, The Debt, and Motherhood, all of which were released in 1917. As her acting career started to gain traction, Agnes married Frank P. Shucker, an Army captain. This marriage seemed to promise financial stability for her and her mother, until she could make a name for herself in the film industry. However, the marriage would be put to a test by her sudden rise to stardom. It was during this time that actress Alice Joyce noticed Agnes's resemblance to her and offered her the role of her sister in Richard the Brazen, a Vitagraph production. This was the break she needed. Agnes remained with Vitagraph until the latter part of 1919, acting in numerous short films based on the famous short story writer O. Henry's works. These roles earned her the nickname the O. Henry Girl at the studio, and this was an important developmental phase in her career. "I have never really enjoyed anything more than those pictures," Agnes later remarked. "I used to love to study the heroines of the various stories, and it was a joy to visualize each different one on the screen." At Vitagraph, most of her roles were of virtuous heroines, though she occasionally played the vamp. "I was very mean too," she recalled. "I said to myself as I was portraying the role, I hate her, and I'll do anything I can do to make her unhappy. I always tried to do that in picture acting. I tried to live my part, and I find that makeup and costume really do change my personality." After her tenure at Vitagraph, Agnes set her sights on Hollywood. She soon caught the attention of producer Jesse Lasky. Lasky had formed his own production company in 1913, which was called the Jesse Lasky Feature Play Company. He served as president, while his partners were Cecil B. DeMille, actor and director Oscar C. Apfel, and Lasky's brother-in-law, Samuel Goldwyn. In 1914, the company produced Hollywood's first ever feature film, The Squaw Man, directed by DeMille. They then signed a deal with Utah-based cinema owner W. W. Hodkinson, who had founded Paramount Corporation. Paramount would use its wide network of movie theaters to distribute Lasky's pictures nationwide, the first deal of its kind in Hollywood history. After a string of successful pictures, Lasky merged his company with Paramount and rival Adolph Zukor's company to form Famous Players Lasky. Zukor and Lasky bought out Hodkinson and now owned the whole chain of cinema production, including distribution. Lasky would serve as vice president, a role which put him in charge of production, and part of this job was to secure new talent. In 1919, Famous Players Lasky, better known to most people as Paramount, was in the process of building an enormous new studio in Astoria, New York, which still stands today under the guise of Kaufman Astoria Studios. Back then, the company was gearing up for a major uptick in output and quality, and they needed new faces to match the studio's grandeur. After spotting Agnes Ayres, Lasky was completely bowled over. Impressed by her performances, he was even more besotted with her beauty and charisma on screen, despite being a married man with children. Lasky brought her to Los Angeles, casting her in Held by the Enemy in 1920, a Civil War melodrama produced by Paramount. In the film, Agnes portrayed a Southern belle whose unloved husband is reported killed in the war, only to reemerge after she reconnects with a former lover, now a Union Army officer. Sadly, the film is now lost. Agnes's performance in the film received high praise. Agnes Ayres gave a performance that was truly great. She looked wonderfully well and carried the role to perfection, noted Variety. Lasky signed Agnes to a contract with Paramount and dedicated himself to promoting her career. They started a long-term affair, through which he provided her with the best scripts and paired her with the studio's top directors and leading actors. Shortly after arriving in Hollywood, Agnes told a reporter that her ultimate dream was to succeed on stage. "I had an offer to go into musical comedy, and also a play just before coming west," Agnes said. "But I didn't accept because I really want to achieve my screen ambitions first. I feel as if I have the opportunity to do this now." Given Lasky's involvement and the benefits it brought, it would have been unwise for her to go back to New York to chase her lesser roles. This relationship was having major benefits for her career. By the end of that year, Agnes had secured leading roles in The Furnace, directed by William Desmond Taylor, and Go and Get It, directed by Marshall Nealon. During this period, Agnes also took care of personal matters, initiating divorce proceedings against Frank Schucker on grounds of failure to provide financial support. In court, she introduced herself as Agnes Schucker, somewhat sneakily omitting her screen name, Agnes Ayres. Her mother testified that she had financially supported Agnes for over a year. The judge initially granted the divorce based on non-support, but reversed the decision upon discovering Agnes was a well-paid movie star. Ultimately, the court recognized desertion as a valid reason for divorce, and Agnes, now presenting herself correctly as Agnes Ayres, succeeded in her plea. The divorce was finalized. Back in Hollywood, Agnes's exceptional performance in 1921's Forbidden Fruit solidified her leading status at Paramount. Directed by Cecil B. DeMille, she played a seamstress pretending to be a society lady. We are fortunate to still have this film available in full, and Ayres is featured in a lavish Cinderella flashback, which was quite spectacular for that time. Variety praised her performance, noting, "Agnes Ayres, a young woman who has made marvelous strides since leaving Vitagraph, is giving chief honors and wears them well. She's a beautiful girl and portrays a many-shaded character excellently." In 1921, Agnes appeared alongside the charming yet tragic Wally Reed in 3 films: The Love Special, a Western railroad drama, Too Much Speed, and The Affairs of Anatole. In the latter, under DeMille's adept direction, Reed saves Agnes's character from taking her own life after her husband accuses her of embezzling church funds. And if you'd like to hear more about the dramatic downfall of Wally Reed, we have a video all about him, which is showing on screen now. In the summer of 1921, Agnes began filming the movie she is most famous for today, The Sheik. She portrayed Lady Diana Mayo, a determined English blonde. In the film, Rudolph Valentino plays Sheik Ahmed, who stalks, abducts, and eventually seduces her in his tent in the Algerian desert. Lady Diana confronts him to clarify his intentions. He looks at her with that Valentino look, the one which set a million hearts beating, and looks at the inner chamber of his tent, smirkingly saying, "Are you not woman enough to know?" According to Picture Play, Valentino seemed too youthful for his character, and it was Ayres who won the better reviews. We liked Agnes Ayres better, as the obstinate beauty who shrinks from his advances, though we must say she didn't have much to shrink from. On the other hand, Variety thought Valentino was the best thing about the film, and gave Ayres a mediocre review, saying, "Agnes Ayres looks too matronly to lend much kick to the situation in which she finds herself. She has shown herself capable of much better things than this." Reviews aside, George Melford's film was an enormous success. Its allure was no doubt partly due to the success of the novel, and its thrilling Orientalist and exoticist themes, which, while they may seem dated now, were extremely exciting to the average American housewife of the early 1920s. The novel by Edith Maud Hull had caused uproar on its release due to its depiction of sexual violence between the main characters, something which was merely alluded to in the film. Critics were distraught that the movie had ended up significantly toned down by overzealous censors. Melford Riley remarked, "We have handled the frank scenes in The Sheik so delicately that I think the censors will be the only disappointed reviewers." The film was a massive hit, setting new records for attendance worldwide. Jesse Lasky celebrated the film's success by declaring the last week of November 1921 as the Sheik Week, showing the film in 250 theaters across the US on the same day as its national release. The film enjoyed a 6-month run in Sydney, Australia, and a remarkable 42 weeks in a single French theater. It was also the first of Valentino's films to be shown in Italy. In its first year, The Sheik grossed over $1 million in ticket sales, a significant return on its production cost of less than $200,000. The film was instrumental in establishing Valentino as one of the first major male sex symbols in cinema, and propelled him to international fame. Nonetheless, it was Ayres who featured on the poster for The Sheik, and was considered the biggest star in the moment. While Valentino would head into the stratosphere as the most desired man in the world, Ayres' career was also on a positive trajectory. Her next movie, The Lane That Had No Turning, saw her playing a French opera singer married to a hunchback. Variety was lukewarm on her performance. As in her previous picture, The Sheik, Miss Ayres is relegated to a secondary position as regards prominence by another member of the cast. In the Sheik, it was Valentino who outshone her. And in this release, the honors go to Theodore Kosloff as the deformed husband. Miss Ayres lends a pleasing appearance, but is not called upon to do anything out of the ordinary. During the spring of 1922, while filming Borderland, Agnes and her co-star Milton Sills were scheduled to perform a skit called The Dumbbell Wives at the first annual Hollywood Follies, a musical comedy show. They rehearsed the skit together, but on the evening of the event, Agnes suddenly backed out, overcome with fear, saying she hadn't rehearsed enough. Panicked, she fled from the theater, just as they were about to step onto the stage. Sills, ready for his role, could not go on without her. Marion Fairfax, the chairperson of the show, was irate. She sent a letter to Sills the following day venting her anger. She wrote, "I myself took her back into the wings for her entrance, and I did not know until after the show was over that she left the wings that moment my back was turned, or that this was what prevented your appearance. I am truly indignant that this should have happened, and that we lost the value that you would have added to the number. It seems outrageous, after you gave so much of your time as you did to be with us, that such a thing could have happened." In June, filming started on Clarence, her last film with Wallace Reed, who was severely ill by this time. Agnes was shocked by his deteriorated condition. Agnes, on her fourth film with Reed, had secretly fallen in love with the ailing actor. He experienced multiple collapses while on set and was sent home to recuperate. Agnes would visit him at his Sunset Boulevard home, spending hours at his bedside. She professed her love for him, declaring she couldn't live without him, which initially amused Dorothy Reed, his wife. However, Wallace soon grew weary of her visits, leading Dorothy to ask Agnes to stop coming. Agnes continued to call, pushing Dorothy to the brink of desperation. In a moment that seemed straight out of a melodrama, Dorothy threatened to throw acid in Agnes's face if she visited ever again. That warning was effective. Agnes did not come back. Despite her emotional turmoil and occasional dramatic outbursts, Jesse Lasky, the driving force behind her career, kept giving her some of the best projects the studio had to offer. In The Ordeal, a high society drama, she wore a variety of stunning gowns. She then portrayed an outcast in The Ten Commandments, her third film directed by Cecil B. DeMille. In Racing Hearts, she purchases a race car and triumphs in a race. To market the film, Paramount spun a tale that Agnes was arrested twice for speeding while shooting the movie. It's fair to say that what is considered valuable media spin has evolved a lot over the years. In any case, she spent a day on set rehearsing an arrest scene for speeding, only to actually be pulled over by police on her way home that same evening, after the stories of her driving antics had been leaked. We'd like to recommend a book we love on the silent era. If it's something you'd be interested in learning more about, it's the truly fantastic American silent film by William K. Everson, and it has been praised by the New Republic as the best modern survey of the silent period. This history provides a comprehensive overview of American silent cinema, covering everything from the early Nickelodeons of the 1900s to the emergence of the first talkies in the late 1920s. If you grab one via the Amazon link in the description, we get a small kickback at no extra cost to you, which really helps out the channel. Otherwise, why not check out the links to our picks of some silent era films, currently available on Amazon, also in the description. We think this Blu-ray release of The Sheik is truly wonderful, and an opportunity to see this great film in high definition, lovingly restored. Have a watch and come back to let us know what you think, but back to the video. In 1923's The Heart Raider, Agnes portrayed another character known for her love of speed. While Variety complimented her as that rare type of a good-looking athletic girl, who is both the kind of girl everyone likes, Harrison's reports criticized her casting, arguing she was too old for the role. The heroine is supposed to be of unmanageable nature and of destructive disposition, making her father pay damages on account of her speed mania. Such a part requires a woman of much younger age than that of Miss Ayres. It requires too great a stretch of imagination to accept her as the young woman of the story. By 1924, Agnes had delivered some of her finest performances. Harrison's reports praised the story without a name as a good melodrama, and The Guilty One as one of the most gripping murder mysteries produced by famous players Lasky and Many a Moon. But still, none of these films matched the success of the Sheik, and the lack of progress in her career was frustrating her. It was already 3 years since her breakthrough leading role, and she wanted another major film. Over time, Agnes became disenchanted with being seen as merely a kept woman at Paramount. She realized that Lasky would not leave his wife for her, despite his unhappy marriage. In October 1923, at a gathering at her friend actress Kathleen Williams' home, Agnes met a charming young Mexican called S. Manuel Ricci, who was an attaché to the Mexican Consulate General in San Francisco. Their romance quickly developed, and by August 1924, they announced their engagement. For a month following the announcement, Agnes repeatedly denied that they were already married. However, in September 1924, she revealed to journalists that they had wed in Mexico the previous July. She declined to explain why they had kept the marriage secret, stating simply, "We just didn't want it known. That's all." She added that they planned to honeymoon in Europe after she finished filming Worldly Goods. That autumn, Agnes wrapped up Tomorrow's Love, marking the end of her 5-year stint with Paramount. While this association with Lasky and Paramount had made her a star, it was becoming clear that she would need to look elsewhere for that elusive role that would match her talent and popularity. She joined Producers Distributing Corporation, agreeing to 3 films at $10,000 each. Her market value was her initial project with PDC, followed by The Awful Truth. In this film, a flurry of misunderstandings between the flirtatious Agnes and her husband, played by Warner Baxter, culminates in a trip to divorce court. However, she later hatches a plan to reclaim her husband. The New York Times lauded Agnes as serenely delightful in the film, noting she was happily cast in this type of role. No one could or need do it better. Both were well reviewed, but again fell short of her hopes for a smash hit. One positive outcome of her market value was her newfound friendship with co-star Hedda Hopper, whom she would remain close to for the rest of her life. That summer of 1925, during a break between films, Agnes invited a reporter from the Los Angeles Times to her home on Martel Avenue to discuss her marriage and ongoing film career. "It feels good to be home," Agnes expressed. "I'm usually off to the studio early and back late. Now I finally have some time to tend to my roses and spend time with my pets," which included a parrot, a German police dog, a cat named Tino after Rudolph Valentino, and some chickens. Following her extended stint with Paramount, Agnes was in search of less decorative roles that would allow her to distinguish herself as an individual, not just a beauty. By July of the next month, Agnes had tired of her gardening and caring for chickens. She had also grown tired of PDC dropping her into mediocre films. She initiated a lawsuit against PDC for $43,000, claiming they had not honored their agreement. In August, she increased the amount of the lawsuit to $93,000. Agnes's contention partly involved Cecil B. DeMille, a partner at PDC who had, according to her, promised better roles if she signed with the company. She argued that her absence from the screen had harmed her public reputation. Moreover, Agnes was upset that in the promotion for Three Faces East, a film she never actually made, DeMille had billed her alongside a less prominent actor, contradicting her contract which stipulated star billing in all of her projects. In response, PDC contended that Agnes's increased weight, which they claimed violated her contract, was the reason she hadn't been cast in more leading roles. Agnes vehemently disputed this claim and prepared for a legal battle. She even produced photographic evidence to prove that she had not gained weight since her role in The Sheik. It, however, was possibly unknown to the studio that she was pregnant at the time. Just 2 days after filing her amended lawsuit, news broke that Nora Hingley DeRicci from Hawaii had divorced her husband due to desertion. This was a major shock to Agnes. Nora DeRicci was claiming she was still married to Manuel Ricci when he wed Agnes. Manuel responded to reporters with confusion about the allegation, insisting he had never been to Hawaii, had never been married prior to Agnes, and didn't know a Nora Hingley DeRicci. The woman's claim ultimately led nowhere. In February 1926, during a court deposition, Cecil B. DeMille said he had tried to delicately inform Agnes about her weight issue and had not insulted her. "I did not say," he insisted, "Lady, you are fat." When asked why Agnes hadn't appeared in more films, DeMille noted, "I remember hearing discuss the fact that the exhibitors would not take her because she had lost her appearance." The court asked, "Did you talk to her about her weight the last time you saw her?" "We discussed questions quite frankly, but whether it was because she was fat or not, I don't remember," DeMille responded. When queried if he noticed any changes in her facial appearance over their meetings, DeMille replied, "She has always seemed very charming to me." Agnes and her husband stood firm against the accusations. Manuel spoke to journalists stating, "We have authorized statements from Ms. Ayres' physicians showing that she has not gained 1 pound of flesh for the last 4 years, and also certified photographs to prove and uphold these statements." Agnes's lawyer, Gunther R. Lessing, dismissed the weight claims as just another tactic to undermine Agnes for asserting her rights. Since when has a beanpole become Mr. DeMille's standard of beauty? Everybody has noticed that, like Caesar, he likes them fat. While the legal proceedings continued, Agnes welcomed a daughter, Maria Eugenia, on March 26, 1926, with Pola Negri and Rudolph Valentino as godparents. In May 1926, the Producers Distributing Corporation settled the lawsuit out of court in Agnes's favor, expressing, "No animosity exists towards you, and we hope we may avail ourselves of your services in the future." This stressful period behind her, she was hoping that her career would get back on track. Her dream was to star alongside her dear friend Valentino once more. And as good fortune would have it, that's just what was about to happen. Later that same May, it was revealed that Agnes would return to the screen in The Son of the Sheik, the sequel to The Sheik. She would reprise her role as Diana. However, for Agnes, the role would not be a leading one. Valentino would play both the father and Ahmed the son, born from the relationship between Diana and the Sheik, but it would be Vilma Benki, whose name would be up in lights alongside Valentino's, not Agnes's. Benki plays a local dancing girl who Ahmed falls in love with. Agnes was reduced to the supporting role of Ahmed's mother. The Son of the Sheik premiered in July 1926 to enthusiastic audiences. Valentino promoted the film with a national tour. During the debut at the Strand Theater in Brooklyn, he warmly praised Agnes for accepting a smaller role in his film and for her dedication to her newborn daughter. This appearance would be his last in public. Shortly after that, Valentino succumbed to a ruptured gastric ulcer and peritonitis in New York, passing away at the age of 31. Agnes, along with countless fans, mourned his loss deeply. "His death is doubly affecting to me, because not only were our careers so closely linked in the struggle for picture success, but he had ever proved himself as a loyal friend," she said. After this, Agnes's marriage to Manuel Ricci deteriorated. Manuel left their home on Martel Avenue, prompting Agnes to file for divorce on grounds of desertion and abuse. In court, Agnes described her husband's behavior as harsh, recounting instances where she bore the physical signs of his aggression and suffered from nervous chills due to the fear he instilled in her. She showed the court the marks of his hands on her throat. She testified that he had abandoned her 5 times since their marriage, including a trip to Europe without her. "Judge, he would fly into terrible rages over trivial matters," Agnes explained in court. "Often I had no idea why he was so upset." The divorce was finalized in June 1927. The court arranged a property settlement that freed each from any future claims. Ricci agreed that their daughter would stay with Agnes, who would bear the costs of raising her. "I don't regret marrying, because it gave me my daughter, and I might marry again because I love children," Agnes shared with Photoplay. "But my next husband will be an American. Lads and men are passionate lovers, but make poor husbands," she claimed. Even though she was free from an abusive marriage, her time was consumed by single motherhood. Acting jobs that permitted her enough time with her daughter would be hard to come by. So she began to invest her earnings in real estate to secure a healthy financial future for herself and her daughter. She proved to be an astute and successful investor, making a fortune from her small property empire. However, something was still burning in her. It had now been almost 7 years since the Sheik, and still she had not managed to land a role that would give her the hit she knew she could deliver. She was cast opposite comedian Stan Laurel in the slapstick short Eve's Love Letters, which could not have been much further from the grand role she had envisioned. In 1928, Agnes took part in another short film and appeared in several quickie films with talking parts. From December 1928 to November 23, 1929, she was on the New York stage, performing as a Gypsy Joe dancer in Whoopee. It was beginning to seem as though the break she needed was not forthcoming. Her star was fading, her opportunities were dwindling, and she was beginning to age. Her last significant movie role was as a guest at a dinner party in The Donovan Affair in 1929, one of the early talking films directed by Frank Capra. Dorothy Revier, who played Agnes's stepdaughter in the film, initially found her to be quite distant and even somewhat hostile. Revier recalled that Agnes seemed very cool and aloof in an almost vindictive manner at the start of filming. She believed Agnes was involved romantically with the sound technician and had found it amusing to sabotage Revier's voice test for the film, making her voice sound unnaturally high. Frank Capra and I almost panicked before they told us it had all been in fun, Revier said. Surprisingly, we became friends later in the shoot. I began to compliment her, telling her how wonderful she was in the Sheik with Valentino. Before long, she was inviting me to lunch, and we became friends. Variety mentioned in its review that their voices were okay, but that Agnes Ayres seems to be putting on flesh. Once again, her weight, or at least the perception of it, was a focal point of her performance. After the Donovan Affair, Agnes's life began to unravel. If her movie career had gone from stalled to stopped, she still at least had her financial security. Then in 1929, the Wall Street crash obliterated her finances, leaving her destitute and in severe debt. By late 1929, or early 1930, Agnes started a relationship with director Louis Milestone, who was then directing All Quiet on the Western Front. In early April, Luella Parsons wrote in her column, "Mr. Milestone set out to win Agnes, and apparently he has succeeded, for their wedding will take place sometime in June." Details about Agnes's intermittent relationship with Milestone are found in an unsigned draft letter in his papers, housed at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Library. The letter appears to be from someone close to Milestone, possibly an agent or an accountant, who attempted to clarify Milestone's feelings for Agnes at his request. This figure was aiming to provide her with some stability after her financial losses, but it seems Milestone was unsure of his romantic feelings towards her. Agnes, on the other hand, seems to have been very much emotionally attached. Milestone's confidant wrote the following, explaining her situation at the time. "The big house is leased out for $250 a month, and everyone has relocated to the house on Orange Grove Avenue. Last week she received a telegram inquiring if she would accept a stage engagement in New York. She consulted me about what she should do, and I advised her to make her own decision since she's earning her living, but to ensure she received an advance from the organizers." After a flurry of telegrams, they sent her an advance, which she's left with her mother to help support herself and her child. She now earns about $350 a month, a decent income, and it could increase if she continues working, We've done everything possible for her, and she's content with her situation. The insider then cautions Milestone against further complicating matters with Agnes, who is emotionally vulnerable. He wrote, "For the love of God, let sleeping dogs lie. Avoid any contact with her whatsoever. Every time this issue is brought up, it gets more difficult to resolve, and having Misha visit her and speak of romance only complicates things for me. If you genuinely want her, pursue her, but if you're not interested in marriage, stay away and don't communicate with her at all. If you do and then attempt to back out, it will cost you a great deal in money, time, and trouble." Before the letter was sent, Agnes called in a state of distress. The Milestone acquaintance added to the letter. Chaos erupted again. Someone informed Agnes about an interview you gave in New York, where you stated, "I never had an intention of marrying. I was never engaged and have no plans for the future in that line. Whatever you have heard is just a lot of gossip." She was furious on the phone, and I reassured her I would meet her at noon. By 4 p.m. I had calmed her down again, and she agreed to ignore the rumors. I warned her that I would stop managing her affairs unless she composed herself. Since I have successfully stabilized her finances to a livable level so far, I cautioned her to ignore any rumors, as they only enrage her further each time. In New York, Agnes was preparing for her role in the upcoming play, Jungle Love, alongside Ninian Bunya and Herbert Rawlinson. The New York Times had reported that the play would debut in Atlantic City on June 9th, before heading to Broadway, but it ultimately never reached New York. Luella Parsons revealed in her April 1931 column that Agnes was set to return to film in Brian Foy's debut feature, Halfway to Hell. However, the film did not come to fruition. In October, Agnes returned to the stage, appearing alongside Victor Jory and On the Spot at the Westchester Theater in Mount Vernon, New York. By December, she was performing with Lou Tellegen and Cortez on the Philadelphia stage. By May 1933, Agnes was in Syracuse, New York, making personal appearances and speaking about the film industry. She expressed her preference for silent film over talkies, accused certain studios of undermining star salaries by sabotaging their box office appeal, and noted that audiences often forget older actors. She also declared that there would never be another Valentino. Towards the end of 1933, Agnes participated in a Hollywood review with Baby Kane, James Hall, and the Rose Sisters. Reflecting again on her past experiences, she described Cecil B. DeMille as a man of infinite charm and a man's man. Regarding the Sheik, she recalled being just a youngster trying to make good, and reiterated her view that no one could replace Valentino, not even Clark Gable or George Raft. She also mentioned her desire to replay her role as Diana in The Sheik, believing it would still resonate with audiences today. In October 1934, while demonstrating beauty care at a salon in New York, Agnes discussed her efforts to reclaim her Hollywood success. "Honestly, I haven't grown bitter, nor disillusioned or catty, I hope, but I know my old public would still want to see me and still talk about me. It's not the public's fault that someone like me wouldn't be given a chance now, when they'll take an untrained peasant girl, spend $2 million on her, and won't dream of signing someone who once had a name and a following. You can't help but ask, why?" In January 1935, as Agnes was managing to get by on sparse work, her brother Solon was admitted to a psychiatric ward in Los Angeles. This came after he threatened to murder Cecil B. DeMille, whom he blamed for harming Agnes's career. Their mother, Emma, told reporters that Solon was suffering from shell shock from his service in World War I. Agnes formed an all-female dance orchestra and toured the East and Midwest during the spring and summer of 1935. The ensemble, known as Agnes Ayres and her Hollywood Debs, received an invitation to perform in Europe, but Agnes decided against it, choosing instead to stay in the United States to reconnect with her old public. The continuous travel for one-night shows began to wear on Agnes's physical and emotional health. By 1936, facing the risk of a nervous breakdown, Agnes returned to Hollywood. She was exhausted, and it had now been 15 years since the Sheik. She'd suffered through an abusive marriage, emotional turmoil, family difficulties, single motherhood, and the loss in one day of all her financial security. There was, she thought, maybe enough left in her for one last roll of the dice, one last chance to see her name up in lights across every movie theater in the land. So it was that the call from Paramount came. In February of that year, it was announced that she would be returning to the movie industry with a minor role in Small Town Girl. The cast was excellent. Robert Taylor, Janet Gaynor, and James Stewart. It might have stung a little that Gaynor had survived the transition to talkies, while Ayres had not. But then Gaynor had the advantage of being 14 years Agnes's junior. Also, Gaynor's star was on the wane, which allowed her to be loaned out by Fox to MGM. Fox figured that a picture opposite Taylor, the hottest property in Hollywood at that time, could do wonders for Gaynor's career when she returned. And Agnes must have been hoping a little of that would rub off on her too. In truth, Agnes's role as Catherine was so small, it was not even credited. The film was a reasonable success, but if she had hoped it might spark a revival, she was about to be seriously disappointed. Resolved to fight against fading into obscurity, Agnes collaborated with numerous other past film stars to support each other in maintaining careers in the industry. They hosted their first annual close-up show in August, with J. Stuart Blackton, a former head at Vitagraph, overseeing the event. Leon Janey, Leo White, and Rupert Hughes served as MCs. Agnes and others, including William Farnham, Lionel Belmore, Maurice Costello, Bryant Washburn, Creighton Hale, Florence Turner, and Alice Calhoun, were appointed officers. Despite her efforts, Agnes continued to receive only minor roles in films released in 1937, such as Morning Judge, Souls at Sea, Midnight Taxi, and Maid of Salem. Yet she remained optimistic about her prospects in the film industry. "I'm still young," she told the Los Angeles Times. "I know more than I did before, and I think I'm a better actress now. Most importantly, I have my feet on the ground, which is quite rare in this town, and I see no reason why I can't make it to the top again." Agnes also believed her daughter Maria, who is now 10 years old, should have a chance to act in films. Almost since she could talk, Maria has played at being a movie star, so I'm going to give her an opportunity. Agnes managed to secure a small part for her daughter in Maid of Salem. To support herself and her family, Agnes opened a small real estate office and began selling property again. She kept herself in the headlines with the 1938 re-releases of The Sheik and The Son of the Sheik. In June, it was publicized that Agnes and Jean Acker, Valentino's first wife, would start a 20-week tour making public appearances with the Sheik. However, the demands of the tour became overwhelming for Agnes, who was already in a delicate state. In October 1938, she experienced a nervous breakdown. After several months of recovery, she reflected on her efforts to regain prominence. "It cost me $500,000 to learn the value of a nickel, but I wouldn't exchange that experience for all the money back again. Making a comeback has been incredibly challenging, but I've managed it before, and I'm confident I can do it again." In November 1939, Agnes gave up custody of her daughter to her ex-husband, Manuel Ricci, for 13 months. "I've been sick for most of the past year, and I think it's best for my daughter to stay with her father until I'm better," Agnes explained to a local domestic relations court commissioner. Shortly afterward, Maria moved to Mexico City to be with her father. On Christmas Eve 1940, Agnes suffered a cerebral hemorrhage at her home and was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital. She passed away on Christmas Day without regaining consciousness. A few days later, a modest service was held at Pierce Brothers Chapel, where a soloist performed Agnes's favorite song from the Sheik, the Kashmiri song, also known as Pale Hands I Loved. Her remains were placed in a niche in a mausoleum at Hollywood Memorial Park, close to Paramount Studios, where she had once been a prominent star, nearly 2 decades earlier. Hedda Hopper dedicated a column to her late friend. There will be many emotional tributes to Agnes Ayres, who died on Christmas Day at the age of 42, Years ago, when I made a film with Agnes, she was at the pinnacle of her career, akin to the fame of Lana Turner, Anne Sheridan, and the late Jean Harlow. She had everything a woman could desire, but as she often said, it all came too quickly, and she lacked the training to handle the trust and immense responsibility that comes with such success. Hopper wrote, Agnes was genuinely kind-hearted, and her death should serve as a poignant lesson to today's stars. And if it does, perhaps many of them will take a moment to pause, look, and listen. Unlike Norma Desmond, Agnes Ayres had to struggle with the harsh realities of financial devastation and motherhood, as well as the debilitating effects of her failure to get back on the big screen, where she felt she belonged. The trials of her later life led her to an early grave, and even today, when the Sheik is recognized as one of the silent era's masterpieces, she has fallen into further obscurity. Her star has been overshadowed by her great friend Valentino's, but her contribution to the film's almighty success was equal to his. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this look at the life of Agnes Ayres. If you want to help out the channel, then please consider becoming a YouTube member or joining our Patreon. Starting from $1 a month, you'll get access to exclusive content, like photos and mini essays on the history of Tinseltown, as well as polls to vote on future videos and discounted merch. And why not take a look at our online store, where we have a range of Hollywood Mysteries merch, including these cool mugs, ideal for sipping your black as midnight on a moonless night coffee while watching the Sheik. That's all for this episode of Hollywood Mysteries. Sweet dreams.